Hi, this is the overview of the requirements and expectations for Research Task 5, which requires you to develop an analysis plan for the research questions that will form the framework of the structure of the findings section of the final research report. So this Task 5 is due week 10. So this is related to the findings section of your report, and it does not require you to actually do the analysis itself, but you do need to be able to plan out what type of data needs to be used and what analysis procedures are required on that data for each of the research questions within the findings. So in terms of for each research question, so that's an important thing in terms of structuring both your findings section and your submission for Task 5. For each research question that is asked of the project, you'll need to appraise the best evidence to use to answer the research question, determine the most appropriate analysis procedure, and identify any data transformations, computations, or reporting requirements needed. So what does this mean? Well, for any particular research question, you need to decide whether the qualitative or the quantitative data is more appropriate, or a mixture of the two is needed in order to answer the question. If you're talking about the quantitative data, you need to determine which items or which scales within the quantitative instrument are required to answer the question. In terms of the analysis procedures, you need to decide what kind of test needs to be run on that data if you're talking about quantitative analysis. So, should a t-test be run? What type of t-test? Those kinds of procedures need to be selected. And in terms of presenting the data or being able to analyze the data effectively, you might need to transform the data in some way. You might want to transform a metric variable into a non-metric variable. You might want to consider a few items as a concept as a whole, which means you need to compute a mean for the various items that represent a concept. And in terms of reporting requirements, this is how should the data or how should the findings be presented. So in terms of what you need to submit, you need to, firstly, for each research question, identify and justify the appropriate evidence. In terms of quantitative analysis procedures, this includes the test to be conducted, the variables that will be used, the data transformations or computations, and finally, you should also include the templates of how the analysis will be presented. The reason I'm requiring someone to develop such a plan is that doing the actual analysis relies on having all the data collected, which we have somewhat less control over as we're relying on respondents to participate, which might take a bit of time in order to collect sufficient amounts of data. So with this plan in place, it means that once all the evidence is collected, or once all the data is collected, it means that everyone in the group can be assigned a particular research question, and then everyone knows what they need to do in terms of answering that research question in conducting the analysis. So there is more information available on Wattle as to the marking criteria for this task, and also more about submission information.